Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Katherine Peterson here with my co-host, Michael Regan. And today we have a great guest, Brent Palmer, who I met a while ago at a mastermind with Michael and got to know him there. And it's been a while since we've seen each other, so we just spent some time catching up. But why we wanted Brent to join us on the podcast is he has a little bit of a different background that he'll tell us about today. He's been in mortgage since 2002, so quite a long time now, and is also a Porsche enthusiast. And we're excited to chat with him about his journey and a little bit about what he brings that's unique to the mortgage space. So first, I'm going to welcome in my host, Michael Regan. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Catherine, great to be with you. Great to be with Brent, and really excited to dig into this story. When I met Brent, he had an afro full of full hair, and then this industry it takes you down a notch. But he's a fighter, he's a survivor, he's really a thriver would maybe be the best word, because anytime I've seen Brent under pressure, he's one of these people who finds a way, and some of that is just onboard grit and tenacity, and some of it is he's really learned to be very strategic, and it's been fun to watch his journey. But I'll stop rambling about him unapologetically and welcome our friend Brent Palmer into the frame. Brent, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I haven't done many podcasts, but I'm excited and a little nervous. So we'll see how it goes. And by the way, is this a rated one? Because sometimes I might say inappropriate words, but I just want to make sure I can be extra safe if we're going for the PG rating.
Yeah, so let's call it PG-13. How about that? Feel
Okay.
free to use your words wisely. We may not want to go on a tirade, but we're not afraid of the art of being blunt. How about that?
There we go. Sounds good. I mean, there is swearing in the mortgage industry. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, Catherine, just to be clear, I would have never invited Brent on the podcast had I not known that already. I mean, this is, we knew this going in, and Brent, that's part of what I love about you. There's no gloss. Anytime I've spent time with you, you're a straight shooter. And whether we've been sitting at a coffee shop or at a pub drinking a beer, it's been straight shooting every time. So your questions are direct, your personal input is direct. Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, if we could somehow go back to, meeting you as a teenage kid, have you always been just a straight shooter by nature, or has that evolved over time?
It's definitely evolved. I think that, younger Brent, I was, not super secure or not, I was pretty insecure, but it was more so, always played sports, but was never like the best at the best. But even going back, I tried to surround myself with people that I felt would add value in one way or another, whether, the better football player or the better academic or, the better artist, because that is when I felt the most inspired, and it kind of pushed me, even though I wasn't the greatest, I could see what I could potentially be. But quietly insecure for a lot of it, and still am for that matter. Like I'm, very extroverted in most cases, but also, pretty introverted when it comes to, larger social situations or even something like this.
So then, if we went, let's stay in that season for just one more moment, because I want to learn about how that shifted for you. Were there influences in your life, whether it was sports with a coach or a teacher, maybe somebody in your family, community, who inspired you to maybe step into those uncomfortable places in your life and give stuff a try when maybe the introvert in you might have said, "Hold back"?
I think that, if I was to go back as like super far, my grandfather on my mom's side was probably a huge example that I wanted to lean into. I saw him, working, he served in the Navy. He worked union electrician for 20 some odd years, and then dedicated his life to politics in a small town up in northern Washington, Everett, Washington, for those that are up in that area. And so he was a city councilman for years, and just seeing, how he navigated through community was pretty inspiring. I don't think that I really thought about it too much when I was, 12 or 13, hanging out with him for the summers. But that to me is like, how you interact with people, being truly authentic and, and caring, I think was a huge motivation for me.
Yeah, I think that you love people, even though you're an introvert, or partially introverted, let's call you. So that definitely comes through when I think people meet you. So tell me a little bit about you. You kind of entered mortgage a little bit differently, and that's one of the things I want to make sure we bring up because a lot of people enter it on the sales side. You really entered it on the operations side. So walk us through that journey and maybe how you started there and what insights that gave you as a leader that you're using today.
Yeah, I mean, so getting into the mortgage industry for me was a complete by accident. It was had no by design whatsoever. I struggled in school and barely graduated high school. And, it wasn't for, being pushed across the stage like, bro, you're not, we don't want you here anymore. And then it was quickly realized as like, okay, well, what's next? And I had no plan whatsoever. I knew I didn't want to work because that's not fun. So I decided to go the community college route and again, just struggled academically. Uh, I battled with ADD, ADHD when still do some, some to some extent now, but then found art and that kind of came naturally to me. And I was like, oh, I can do this, like I don't have to, like, and so that kind of evolved. Ended up going to an art school up in Seattle, then transferring to U of O. And that's where I finished out my college is at the University of Oregon. So go Ducks. And but really again had no plans like okay well college is done, what do we do? Tried to get jobs in the art field coming in that 2001 2002 era, and there wasn't a lot available, so kind of just bounced from one thing to one thing. And then finally a recruiter reached out to me because they saw my graphic design resume for some reason on Monster, for those that remember Monster, and offered me a job at Household Finance in I can't remember what they called it, but it was like their associate program. And then for whatever reason, the numbers of mortgage made more sense to me than any kind of math before. Like I joke now, like, like sometimes I do simple math and I'm like, I don't, they're like buddies of mine tease me. They're like, aren't you in finance? I was like, no, I sell stuff. Like I don't do math. I sell stuff. That kind of came natural and I kind of fell in love with it. But yeah, and then it was, more of the operations side. I've worked as a processor, a funder, um, disclosure desk specialist, kind of jack of all trades, and then finally kind of transitioned into sales. I would say full-time sales or committed sales I would say in 2012 is when I really started to turn my business into a different direction. And a lot of that was inspired through the leadership that I was working with at that time and that I remained with for a long time of my career. Yeah, it was definitely a different path, and and got to meet a lot of great people along the way. But I wouldn't say that I was, thrown into sales right away. I got to learn how to manufacture a loan before I ever had the opportunity to sell a loan. And I think that that gave me a huge strategic advantage over somebody coming right out of college or somebody coming out of a different sales industry that, they know how to sell, they know how to talk to people, but they don't know how to put together the loan. And so there's definitely a different strategy there.
Yeah, without a doubt. In fact, when I hear that story, I think that had to immediately give you a set of tools to work with that many of your sales competition in 2012 would not have had. Um, Go back 20 years ago. Would someone today that meets you, I mean, you're in the Portland market, so you probably get to see a lot of people that might have known you 20 years ago. Would they recognize the leader you became, or would they have seen the seeds of what has evolved over time? Was that evident 20 years ago before you were in sales?
I don't, it depends on who you talk to, right? So, I know that you've had him as a guest before, but Patrick Palmer was one of the first in the industry to give me a shot as a processor loan officer assistant. And, I was in my early 20s, married, just had my first kid, but still definitely that frat boy lived very, very closely to the service at that time. So, Patrick, he would be a phenomenal one to ask because probably not. But, there was like anything else an evolution of, you know, what is going to be the next thing, and also like just this desire again surrounding myself with successful people and seeing what Patrick and his partners were building at Alpine at that time in the early 2000s, seeing where they came from First Horizon, and then fast forwarding to going to Home Street Bank and seeing the transition from the MetLife crew coming over. It was really important to surround myself with people I knew could push me to be better, not allow me to be complacent in my activities or my disciplines, and to evolve them, right? Because you can't do the same thing over and over and over again. But there are people that saw it, like I was really at a crux in my business in 2009 where I wasn't fully committed to the origination side. I was originating, but I was definitely a part-time originator, and I needed to pay the bills. So I kind of did this split role of originating, assisting, working with operations, everything else. And it was Rosemary David that came on from MetLife that she's like, no, you're pure sales. Cause I wanted to go full ops. I was like, you know what? I just want consistency. I want that paid vacation. Like give me all of those things. And she's like, you're out of your mind. This is not your role. This is not what you strive for. And so it was really her and, the other sales support, Jeff Schaller, Susan Putnam, that were in the industry that were like, no, come on, man, we're going to push you along the way. And then in getting introduced to you, Michael, of, like, okay, well, now let's create a business by design, which that still sticks with me today.
Wow, it's fun to hear you talk about your journey and the different people along. I want to kind of take a little bit of a different view, and this is not on our question list, but you have a new calm to you since I met you last time. So you just feel different, and it's hard to describe obviously on a podcast, but you have a little bit of a sense of maybe it's confidence or um, strength. So talk to me a little bit about what's changed in the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years to get you to that point. Because I think in that time period, you also have become a little bit of a different leader in that time frame. So talk me through that journey that you've had since then.
Well, I mean, there's two ways. It's either medication, therapy, or maturity. I think it's maybe a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But no, I
Brent,
think
that
that,
sounds like three ways.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Catherine, you and I met when, I was pushing to be that, was that $100 million a year originator, and very ego driven, very, like I had that dominance of, like my stuff doesn't stink. And 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 I think that there's a place for that. There is always a place for ego, because without ego, it's truly difficult to push yourself and push your business and push your partners and everything else. But there's a balance between ego and narcissistic behavior. Uh, and so I think that my shift was I got burnt out a little bit on the customer interaction of originating. And I had the opportunity again from these great people that I've met along the way to go into leadership. And I decided that I wanted to do it differently. I didn't want, traditionally in our mortgage industry, you have branch managers that become a branch manager because, and I'll just be frank, I'll put it on the table. Most branch managers are top producing loan officers that their company make them a branch manager so that they can justify them paying higher than average basis points. Okay. So they're not really interested in leading people. They're interested in financial gain of being the branch manager. Now, there are some branch managers out there that are truly great, and they're kind of, they're above average originators, or maybe they're even average, but they really can help manufacture that loan process, give systems, give critiques, and make loan officers stronger. I really wanted to be the latter, but I still wanted to be that top originator.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a balance, and it just kind of shifted. I think also age, maturity, having daughters that have grown up, and, seeing different relationships throughout the industry where there's no reason not to be calm and collected and have conversations. It doesn't mean like my business partner now, Brandon Spooner, you talk to him. It's not like I don't get fired up. I definitely can pull that character back out of the bag. But I think that it's just a matter of understanding who you want to be and how you want to convey that.
Mm-hmm.
I think is the important part.
Yeah, Catherine, great observation on your part. I get to spend time with Brent on a regular basis, so I've seen this progression a little more, I've seen the steps of it as they go. But the word I would attach to this, Brent, is poise. Poise is a word that is a keen sense of what's appropriate. And when I met you, it's not that that didn't exist. It's just I'm not sure you knew when and when it wasn't appropriate. And as you've really grown as a leader, you're really good at knowing when to turn on the fire button and when to cool the jets a little and ask a question, try to dig into the context a little more, maybe even seek to understand someone else's point of view. And that's to your credit as a leader, because I think it's allowed you, from my seat, to really expand your capacity as a leader. I mean, today you're leading a much larger group of people than when I met you with just the Palmer team, and the Palmer team was great, but that was like a nuclear test kitchen for what you get to do now. Were there failures along the way that shaped that? Were there moments where you said, "Okay, I'm going to stop going this way and shift to that way"? I'd love for our listeners to really hear, what were those pivotal moments, if you remember one or two, that helped you really level up as a leader?
I mean, I don't, here's that's a funny question, because I've actually never really thought about it. Like, I wouldn't say that I've had any failures. I've had speed bumps along the way, or things, whether it's market driven or team basis or anything else. But besides like some personal stuff, like investing in a skateboard and snowboard shop in the mid 2000s, like that failed. But from a mortgage industry standpoint, I've just been hyper strategic about where my alignment is, but also very, very aware that anything in life, you have to have constant evolution. What works today isn't going to necessarily work tomorrow. And if you're not evolving and being open to what that looks like and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, and you see this a lot now, like originators that I see in my market that 15, 20 years ago, they were dominant. And it's just every year they've just slowly chunked down their business without any ability to evolve, and they're still doing the same things that they did 20 years ago, expecting a different result. It's literally the definition of crazy, right? I mean, and so for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to build this origination team, but I'm going to build it with the intent that eventually it's going to be theirs. It's never mine, it's ours, right? I'm going to help build it. And that's where, fast forward, that's where it is today. Is they're still carrying on. Jordan and Gavin are doing great. Both of them are very successful originators in their own right. Jordan is working on kind of building his team now. Gavin works a lot of my old database, and then I get to come and choose. I get to come and go when I want to. I took a loan application earlier this week, and it was great talking to a customer when I want to. And so it was the idea early on that it was going to evolve. I didn't necessarily know exactly what that was, but I kind of saw that as time went on when I hired Jordan McNack, who uh, I think he's going on his 10th, 8th year, whatever. He's been with me a while, but he came out of, like, he was driving, he was gig working. He was working for Amazon. He was working for Verizon, and went out and got his license and said, I want to get in the industry. And I go, you're crazy, do anything else. And then he came back to me and said, no, I've got a job at X company. I go, absolutely not. You will not work at that company. Just come work for me. We'll figure it out. And then quickly I learned that like that pushed my hunger, because now, you know, like anything else, when you have kids, like now you have a person that you're responsible for, and it pushes you a little bit more to dive into that. So it's I think it's the evolution. Like you have to evolve and grow.
Catherine, that answer reminds me of an episode we've recorded where we talk about mindset, and we talk about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And one of the key
Mhm.
ingredients of a growth mindset is the idea that we don't really ever fail. We're just figuring out how to do things. And so as we progress, obstacles get in our way, and sometimes we trip on them, sometimes we fall, but we figure out how to get around them or to get up and keep going. And that's what I hear in you, Brent. I hear a growth mindset, which is really powerful, because that, for a leader, allows people to believe something's possible. I mean, I remember meeting Jordan in that season. I think it was back in 2018, if I remember right. Yeah, he was just a young man figuring things out. And look at, the success he's able to enjoy today is a lot of your belief in what was possible in him. Maybe like you dialed back to Rosemary or Patrick, their belief in what was possible in you. You're carrying that forward. And Catherine, to me, that all feels like growth mindset. And I love hearing that.
Yeah, I wrote
Yeah, you
down
have to.
constant evolution was my words.
Yep. Yeah, I think that, you know, if you're not looking ahead down the road, you know, like that's right. Like one of my favorite quotes ever is from, you know, Jelly Roll. It's why the windshield's bigger than the rear view. Like just keep looking forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so wise. So I hope our listeners are paying attention to that, because often when Catherine and I have the episodes on our own, we'll highlight some of these principles or practices. But it's so great to have a guest on, and these are unscripted conversations. Just hearing Brent express how that type of mindset has evolved into where you are today. So let's learn a little bit about that, Brent, because you're coming out of the COVID season, you made some changes in your career that are now really a lot more independent and entrepreneurial than maybe you had been for the decade or so before that. Tell me what drew your interest in that direction, and what does your leadership role look like today because of those changes that you made?
Yeah, I mean, definitely in COVID or leading up to COVID, you know, branch manager, had a really successful branch, one that was very well established, kept growing my team year over year. We saw 30 to 60% annual growth, you know, sometimes even doubling our previous year. Uh, and then it wasn't, so Brandon Spooner, who's my current business partner now, he and I have known each other for well over 10, 12 years in the industry, just kind of sharing ideas. He was definitely recruiting me, you know, and wanted me to go work for him, but it was just never the timing. And I'm not one to hop around from company to company. And just a quick segment on that, because I hope that a lot of loan officers listen to your podcast and everything else. Here's the deal. If you want to be successful in this industry, stay at the company that you work for as long as absolutely possible, so that your clients, your customers, and your partners know where to find you until that company no longer serves your vision. But
Mhm.
hopping from company to company to company only dilutes your database, your partnerships, your customers. They don't know where to find you. You think about a customer does something every 3 to 7 years, and you're moving companies every 2 years. It's just not a sustainable practice. So I just wanted to add that in there, and we can come back to that if you guys want to. But
Yeah.
I was not one to move companies. I stayed at Home Street Bank, then transitioned to Homebridge when they bought it out, to all together 13 years, which in the mortgage industry, that's, you know, a century almost. Um, and Brandon finally hit me at the right moment and the right time, and gave me an opportunity to go from managing, you know, maybe 500 million in branch volume during that time to go work for a larger corporate company that was, close to 2 billion. So I was like, you know what? Heck yeah, I'm gonna give this a shot. It also in the back of my mind, it gave the opportunity to my team, Gavin and Jordan and Chelsea, and at the time Nicole, to really look to what the possibility could be for their future. So it wasn't just about me. It was like, hey, I have this thing, but now I can give them more ownership of the business that we grew together. Which for me, that was almost more important than the opportunity to lead the 2 billion in volume. So went over there. There's good and bad with big corporate structures. I think that, and we won't name any names. You guys can look me up and find my resume, whatever. But, working at a big corporate company is great because you have a lot of the tools, you have a lot of the resources, you have a lot of money. But your personalities don't always fit, or for every good that you're trying to do, there's somebody that has a different vision that might be trying to put a roadblock in your way. And at that time, from a maturity standpoint, and this is actually those 2 years were probably where I matured the most, because the the top originator in me was like, you guys go fly a kite. We'll keep it PG, right? And I was struggling big time because I'm like, I know what we have to do to be successful. And, and we have all of the tools to be successful. Why are you putting barriers in place? And so it just wasn't great company, just wasn't a good culture, and, and corporate fit for me. They also were in a huge space of acquisition. Like their main model is growth through acquisition. It's not organic. It's, we're going to go buy this, and now you're part of our ecosphere. We're going to go buy this, now you're part. And so it's trying to mend all of these cultures together and trying to find this symbiotic, way to live together. And for me at that time, it wasn't. So then fast forward, got the opportunity. Where I'm at now is Mortgage Express, 25-year truly independent mortgage company. I think we're one of the last ones, because PacRes just got bought up by Go Mortgage. And so really family owned, independent mortgage company. I got the privilege of meeting the owner, Kevin Hancock, which is probably one of the greatest, loyal, like caring, warm, like he's got his personality, and, but he is so caring to his employees, and so, like, they don't even know like how much he cares about them. And for me, when he was like, hey, come over, we have, I want, we've been doing this for 25 years. I'm ready to do something a little bit different. I would love for you and Brandon and Gayla and the team to come over. And for me, it was the opportunity to kind of go backwards a little bit, to have more ownership and control of the process and the experience from the originator standpoint, the customer standpoint. And it hasn't been easy, but it's been a lot of fun, and at times super frustrating, but at other times incredibly rewarding. But have I like to be able to have the little, what are they called, the little puppets? I like to be able to, make the things move and have that. And I have some great partnerships at Mortgage Express with, my counterparts, Kurt and Ryan, that have really helped kind of, we don't have branch managers. We don't have sales managers. We have 3 sales leadership that manages 90 loan officers. And then we have our executive team. And so for me, that gives a lot of influence and control over to the process, but also learning other things of how different things work for different people. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, that's the then and now.
Congrats. That sounds like a great fit for you, and a good spot. So, okay, we're getting close to our time, but I want to make sure that we don't forget to ask you a question that is one of my favorites. What are you listening to? What is influencing you? What events are you keeping tapped into or attending? So really, what's coming in as far as outside influences, whether that be podcasts, books, things like that.
Um, what's funny is I've gotten off of social media. I still poke in there every now and then, but I deleted it from almost all of my mobile devices. So if I need to go on social media, it's usually once or twice a day just to kind of check in to make sure I don't have a message or something or some random stuff. But I try not to get caught up in it. I found it was becoming a huge distraction. So the tough thing is I'm not really paying attention to a lot of stuff. Industry wise, I love Denise Donahue and the Mortgage Nerd. I think that the stuff that she's talking about, and I've never met her, never talked to her, but I think that the stuff and the principles, it resonates with me because there's basics. You don't have to have all of these shiny tools and everything else. Now, some of them are a complement to your business, but really it's just picking up the phone and staying in touch with your database, staying in touch and staying in tune. And you can do that in an authentic way that doesn't say, "Hey, Catherine, have I told you about this great new HELOC program?" Yeah, no top originator made their business by doing a HELOCs. You have to stay in front of your clients so that when they make that emotional decision to buy, refinance, or whatever, you're the first person they call, not the name on the sign. So I like the back to basics stuff. Right now I'm shifting. I kind of had a little moment where I was, kind of down in the dumps a little bit, but I realized like I was listening to a lot of depressing country music and everything else. So I've shifted to, more upbeat music and try to listen to that. I love listening to the podcasts that are positive and inspiring. I'm a big sports guy and car guy. So there is a car talk that I listen to a lot. And then also the New Heights podcast with the Kelsey brothers. I think that you can get caught up in your industry so much that you're just overloaded with every person's opinion and everything else, that I like to kind of sometimes go outside of that to get reflection on how I can relate that to my industry.
Mhm.
Actually, I love that answer, Brent. I would say we hadn't had this conversation before, but that's not that far off from what I would say is my answer as well. I mean, I definitely am a regular reader of Housing Wire, for instance, because I want to know from at least a journalistic standpoint, what are the topics, what are the headlines, what's the main information I need to be processing, but I try very hard not to become group speak with the rest of our industry. And I find that sometimes when we're all in the same ecosystem, you start to hear the group speak. Everybody's got the same buzzwords, everybody's got the same angles. And that doesn't help me think differently as a leader, doesn't help me grow as a coach. So I love hearing that you're finding balance. I was a little worried when the depressing country music was leading you away. I was hoping you weren't going to go to like Alice in Chains. I was going to warn you that that's not going to help with your depression. Hopefully, you found some more uplifting
No,
music.
but I will put some Symphony of Destruction on when I'm gone on a back curvy road and
Oh,
able to drive fast and yeah. So absolutely.
Catherine, he's tapping into my love of Megadeth. I just want to assure you, he wanted to make sure he reminded me that he knows. Listen, Brent, it's been great to hear your story. It's great to hear where you are today. I just want to end with this. If you and I sat down for a breakfast in Portland 3 years from now, what would life look like? What are you working toward? You know, you and Katie will have a different version of life then, and you and Brandon will have a different version of life then. That, by the way, listeners, that's its home wife and work
Yeah,
partner.
my work
To
wife.
I
My,
didn't say that.
they both have amazing hair. I unfortunately recently my 16-year-old daughter decided that my hair was hanging on by a thread and I needed to let it go. So
Just
so
embrace
this
it.
is this shiny top is very new to me. But I don't know. I mean, okay, so the personal stuff, it's what's the transition, in 3 years from now, Brooklyn will be in her second year of college. Hopefully, Hayden, my oldest, will be graduating Boise State and in that RN spot or going to nurse practitioner school. We're still trying to unpack that. I think Katie and I will find some time in the sun throughout the year, but I will always have my home base in Oregon. Uh, Definitely downsize because the 5,000 square feet is a little bit overwhelming when for the most part there's two of you. But work wise, we have goals, right? Last year we finished just right around 600 million as a company. This year, we're kind of targeting 775. We do want to see that growth, and we're trending there very, very quickly. That 3 years from now, I would love to have probably a $1 billion to a $1.2 billion, but staying true to our core roots as a Northwest lender, as somebody that provides a high level of customer service, knowing my customer is the loan officer. That's my customer. And so how do I service that customer to the best of their ability, giving them the tools to be the successful originator or team or whatever they want to be? And that's by maintaining the competitive advantage, making sure that we keep our costs relative, making sure that we're always looking for different ways to be competitive in the marketplace. Our biggest competitor in Oregon is credit unions and mortgage brokers, right? So as a truly independent, mortgage banker, we have to have different levers, and there's only so many you can pull. So making sure that we're competitive, making sure that we have products and services and tools for the loan officers is really important. And that's what I've had the most fun with, is being able to learn some of that aspect. But yeah, I want to, and also like continuing to grow and evolve our sales team, our operations team, and really kind of creating a culture that I believe is the vision of Kevin, our owner, to, really make that family environment. That's what I love the most, is that core culture. And I truly hope that that will only continue to grow in the next 3 years. So yeah.
I love that answer, Catherine. Just like any great vision, I heard mission, I heard purpose, I heard convictions, I heard goals. I mean, that's what you want from a leader. Leaders don't have to be perfect. They just need to be able to communicate those things clearly and consistently. And Brent, I didn't hear there's any end in sight. You guys still have more to achieve and more to accomplish. And I think when you're in that season of life, we sometimes call that empty nesting, but that just frees up your capacity to do things differently. It's not that you'll be less available to your girls, they'll just be less available to you. So you'll have more time to give
Yep.
yourself places to pour into Katie or into the team. Man, it's been great having you today. Thank you for carving out some time. I can't imagine how busy your life is, and knowing that you dedicated the spot you gave us today. I hope our listeners got a ton of value out of the notes they took, and we just appreciate you being a part of our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And you and I have talked before and presented at roundtables. Put my contact info. If somebody wants to reach out, pick my brain, whatever, I'm an open book. And it's definitely, and Denise Donahue, if you're listening, reach out. As from one nerd to another, I would love to pick your brain. I think that the world of your tools and systems. And remember, like, to be successful, you can just stay basic. You don't have to recreate a wheel, but you have to evolve and get outside your comfort zone. So I hope that people will do that in this next season.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. This will close out another episode of Building Bigger Lives. I've been with Michael Regan and Brent Palmer. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find us on all the sources: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. So find us, like, share, and thank you again for joining us today.